July 1997. I'm still working at Illyria Arts as a picture framer, and I still have no more memories about what my life was what my life was like back in July of 1997. But I had some memories last month, last video, which would be last week. Time, it's a crazy thing, and there are memories coming up. I know there are. But let's just get into the books that I read in July of 1997. And we're starting with The Incredible Hulk, Abominations by Jason Henderson. I really need to get my light fixed so you can see these covers better. Or maybe you don't care. I don't know. So this is an original Hulk story, and in it, the Abomination, Emil Blonsky, is allying himself with a group called Ursa, and they want to bring the Soviet Union back and bring it back to greatness, but the Abomination just wants to use them to get revenge on anybody who's done him wrong, like the Incredible Hulk. So the Incredible Hulk, to fight him, he teams up with an organization called SAFE, but the head of SAFE is one of the Abomination's targets. So two big green gamma monsters are going to fight. It's a decent book. The Hulk isn't my favorite character. He can be really great if he has a really good writer. And this is a decent Hulk novel. Let's move on to the next book, book number 2, Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. This is a very meta novel before meta was the big thing that it seems to be now. So it's about Kilgore Trout, a fictional science fiction author, except that someone, I don't know if it's ever actually been verified, but in one of Vonnegut's books, it is said that this author, Kilgore Trout, wrote a book called Venus on the Half Shell, and then a book called Venus on the Half Shell by Kilgore Trout came out. I think most people who have considered it think that it was written by Philip Jose Farmer. Some people think Vonnegut might have written it himself. I don't know personally if it's ever been verified who wrote it. But anyway, so Kilgore Trout, already a very meta thing. Then there's this car dealer in Indiana who thinks that the things that Kilgore Trout has written are actually real. And then there's this author who's basically a stand-in for Kurt Vonnegut, who has created all of these characters, maybe, and is trying to bring them together to get rid of them so he can not write about them anymore and start writing new things. It's just very, very weird. But it's pretty good. It's Kurt Vonnegut, and I do like meta types of stuff. Then we have a word I'm never sure I'm pronouncing correctly in this title, Elric of Melniboné. Melniboné. That's how I say it. There's a little accent on the E at the end of the word, Melniboné. By Michael Moorcock, the first of the Elric series. Elric is an albino warrior type. He's the emperor of Melniboné, however you say it. And the glory years of Melbourne. I'm just going to call it Melbourne. No, Melniboné. The glory years are behind it. Elric's just sort of emperoring around. But his cousin, I think, wants to take over. And so they're going to clash. This is classic fantasy. I know a lot of people that really love this series. I didn't get into it. I think this is the only one that I ever read because I was hearing great things. And Elric has the sword Stormbreaker, I believe is the name of it. Not 100% sure. If anybody knows, and if I'm incorrect, let me know down in the comments. Soul Taker, Stormbreaker. I don't remember, but anyway, people love this character, love this series. I didn't get into it. It just didn't. It didn't ring true with. Well, that's not the way to put it. It just didn't. It didn't hit me the way things like Conan, Solomon Kane, some of these other characters have. But Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. Then we have Fantastic Four: Redemption of the Silver Surfer by Michael Jan Friedman. And in this book, the Human Torch, the Thing, and Mr. Fantastic have been lured into the negative zone by Blastar. And so the Invisible Woman, Sue Storm, Sue Storm Richards, she recruits the Silver Surfer to help her go into the negative zone and rescue the rest of her team. But there is someone called Prodigian, I think, who is basically the negative zone version of Galactus. It's just this huge thing that's eating all the worlds in the negative zone. And so not only do they have to rescue the other members of the Fantastic Four, but they have to stop this negative zone version of Galactus, which is where sort of the redemption for the Silver Surfer comes in. Michael Jan Friedman, decent author. It's a fine book. I do like the Fantastic Four a little bit more generally than the Hulk. A lot of these characters, if they're not my favorite characters, depends on the writer. Let's move on to Back to the Stone Age by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is I believe, the fifth book in the Pellucidar series. It takes place immediately following Tarzan at the Earth's core, and it is about this character, Lieutenant Von Horst, who had gone to Pellucidar with Tarzan and the other guy, Jason Gridley? I don't know, the other guy from the Pellucidar series. So this Lieutenant Von Horst had gone with Tarzan and the other guy back to Pellucidar to save David Innes, I believe his name is. And he got lost. He got separated, and this is sort of his story. Pellucidar being the world inside the Earth, with dinosaurs and weird creatures and all sorts of stuff. So this is just good, pulpy adventure. Not the best of the Pellucidar series, but it's still fun. Then we have Eon by Greg Bear. Greg Bear is a hard sci-fi writer, and in Eon, basically the Earth is on the brink of nuclear war when this giant rock comes from outer space, and the UN and NASA and NATO and all these groups, they're going to send people up to this giant rock, but of course there's all human politics and crap. But they do eventually get there, and it's filled with these rooms that show different time periods in human history from, I don't remember if there's the past, but it goes way, way, way into the future. And this stone might not even be from our universe. It might be from a different universe. And there might be time travel involved. And there's a character, I think, I think there's eventually a nuclear war. And this one character wants to go to a different universe where her family's still alive. It's wild. I don't remember that much about it. It's very hard sci-fi. So everything is sort of, the baseline is real science, and then things sort of extrapolate from there, I guess. Greg Bear, very popular science fiction writer of hard science fiction. I've only read a few of his things. I think more will be coming up. I prefer a little more action and adventure. And I think his writing, personally, if I remember correctly, I felt could be very dry. But it's been a long time, so I could be wrong. Moving on, we have The Lone Ranger's Code of the West, as told to Jim Lichtman. Lichtman? Actually, I can't tell if that's an E or a C. That's why I'm not sure. Horrible handwriting. So this basically is the novelization of 8 episodes of The Lone Ranger, but before and after each telling, the Lone Ranger himself is telling these to Jim Lightman, or whatever his name is. And so, before and after each story that he tells, they talk about ethics and things. So, you get these nice, just, adventurous Lone Ranger stories, but then they're also used to illustrate different ethical things, I guess is the way to put it. It's interesting. It's fun. I like the Lone Ranger. He's not my favorite pulp type character, but he's fine. He's no Zorro, but just a fun little book. All right, the penultimate book for July of 1997, Guilty Pleasures by Laura K. Hamilton. This is the first in the Anita Blake series. I believe there's like 29 books in the series at this point. And Anita Blake, so she's in St. Louis, and she can raise the dead and kill the dead if they get out of hand. And she's hired by someone to investigate some murders. And then she falls in love with this vampire that she's supposed to kill. It's urban fantasy. It's a very popular series, or at least it was. I just didn't get into it. I don't know if it was the characters I didn't like, or Laura K. Hamilton's writing style that I didn't like. It just didn't work for me. I believe this is going to be the only Laura K. Hamilton that's in any of my entire list. And I have heard that as the series has progressed, they've just become more and more pornographic. Not saying that's a good or bad thing, but less horror, more porn. And then finally, the last book that I read in July of 1997, a book that I absolutely love. I'm going to take a quick look at the copyright date. When did it come out? 94. This is Midshipman's Hope by David Feintuck. Hopefully that's how you pronounce his name. This is military sci-fi ish. It's not what I would consider typical military sci-fi, which is about space battles. Generally speaking, that's a very vague thing. But so in this book, there's a ship called the UNS Hibernia, and it is on a 17-month trip to the colony of Hope Nation. There are hundreds of colonists, but the world is basically run by the Catholic Church and the naval sort of military. And what happens is that as they're on their journey, and there's an accident, yes, a hideous accident, that kills the senior officers of the UNS Hibernia. And so this midshipman, Nicholas Seafort, and this is part of the Seafort saga. So Nicholas Seafort is just a midshipman, but he takes over the ship because he is the highest ranking officer, even though he's the lowest ranking officer. But every officer above him is killed. Now there are non-officers, there are military personnel who are non-officers who have been in the service much, much longer than him, who know more than him, but he sticks to the fact that, according to the rules and regulations, as the highest ranking officer on the ship, he is in charge. And so he has to deal with these people that don't want him to be in charge. He has to deal with malfunctions with the ship and the fact that all these other people have died, and some other things that I'm not going to mention because I really, really highly recommend that anyone interested in science fiction read this book. Great characters. I thought it was a great story. I like the world where Catholicism is the law, essentially. It's the highest power in the land, and how that affects people and their behavior, especially Nicholas Seafort. Because he thinks, like, if he takes the Lord's name in vain, unless he can make up for it, he believes he will go to hell. If he swears to God and then, for whatever reason, happens to maybe goes against his word, he believes he is damned to hell. And so these things affect how he behaves. And the Navy it's basically the Catholic Church and the Navy are the two biggest influences on his life. And it's a really interesting world. There are 5 books, maybe more, in the series. I don't remember. I've read them all. Love them all. It all started here. Midshipman's Hope, David Feintuck. Love this book. And you're going to see the rest of the series eventually coming up. So that is it. That is what I read in July of 1997. I feel like I had a question, and then I forgot what it was. So I'm going to go back and look at the list and see if it jogs my memory. I went too far. I'm still a little too far. Let's go back. Nope. Nothing is jogging my memory. So I think I've asked about meta stuff before. So I'll just keep it real simple. Have you read Kurt Vonnegut? Do you like Kurt Vonnegut? If you do, if you have, and if you do, what is your favorite Kurt Vonnegut book? For me, I've enjoyed Kurt Vonnegut more so than the books of his there's a few I haven't enjoyed, but overall I've really enjoyed what I have read from Kurt Vonnegut. As for my favorite book, it's really difficult to say because it's been so long since I've read his stuff that none of it's like jumping into my head and saying. I could obviously just name one of the, like, Breakfast of Champions or Slaughterhouse-Five, but that would be disingenuous of me. I don't remember any of them well enough to say that I have a favorite. So, what do you think about Kurt Vonnegut? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, if you remember or know the name of Elric's sword, let me know in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH5757. That's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.